Jill's Jill's jumping in on the live call today. Welcome everybody to our live webinar here, Q&A with Amy Gardner. It is, sorry about that, my lunch was being delivered. It's Chicagoland Chats with Butch Zamar and our friend, our new friend, Amy Gardner here. Why don't you say hello to everybody, Amy?
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks. So really quickly to start it off, we just want to give everyone a heads up. This is going to be a live Q&A, so please pump in the questions. Let us know about the stuff that maybe you're struggling with during the lockdown and ways that maybe you can, and Amy obviously will be full of knowledge of ways you can kind of help out with that. Butch, why don't you, again, reintroduce yourself so I give you a little FaceTime today and tell everybody what you do.
I'm Butch Zamar. I'm a healthcare reform specialist and author. I help small to mid-sized companies navigate this thing they call the Affordable Care Act, or compliance issues in the workplace that's related around to employee benefits and communication on the work site.
Yeah, so, and Adam over here at Sidebar Insurance, we do insurance solutions for all types, home, auto, business. Butch and I are both insurance guys. We're looking forward to taking care of people. That's why we're doing these presentations while everyone's kind of on lockdown. And now the person you all came here to hear from, actually, Amy, allow you to introduce yourself and your business, talk a little bit about what you do.
Sure. My name is Amy Gardner, and I'm a recovering lawyer turned certified career development and career transitions coach. Our coaching and consulting company is Apochromatik, and we provide a range of different career services. So those include coaching one-on-one for professionals who are ready to advance in their career or ones who want to transition to another role. Sometimes we're hired by employers to help their great people become superstars. And other times we're hired by the individual themselves. We also offer small group masterminds, particularly for attorneys who want to advance in their career or make a change. We do workshops on career skills for professional associations and workplaces, and group coaching for employees to recommit to their corporate mission. And we also are really focused on executive presence as one of our areas of specialty. So we have an online quiz that you can take to assess your executive presence, which is at enhancedep.com, and then you receive free resources to help you improve your presence. And finally, we have a service called Resume Redo for professionals who just want a little help with their resume, LinkedIn, maybe a mock interview, but don't feel they need the full suite of career transition coaching services that we offer.
Gotcha. So you're helping people in their current jobs get to the next job they want, or even the job at the top seat, right, with the executive presence. Explain a little bit more about executive presence, because some people may not understand exactly what we mean.
Sure. So executive presence is really the way that you show up in meetings, in online video or meetings, in court hearings, in important presentations. So it's really the sense that you're giving off, whether people feel like you've got it together or not. And so it shows up in various ways in people's careers. And we've found that people are often promoted based on the work that they do. But as you get promoted in your career, you're going to get to positions where more and more you're representing your employer and needing to instill confidence. And so executive presence is a really key part of that. And we've seen again and again, we've worked with clients who have been overlooked for promotions because of executive presence. And it may be not explained that way. They may say, oh, it's your public speaking, or clients don't feel confident in you, or you're disorganized. But what it's really coming down to usually is executive presence. And so by focusing on that skill and improving in that one area, we've seen how it's like adding rocket fuel to people's careers. If they're already good at their jobs, fixing that one thing can make an enormous impact in helping them to get farther.
Butch, I think you wanted to launch it and start it off. Why don't you kick into the work from home stuff?
Yeah, you caught me off guard there for a second. Thanks. Yeah.
You know, I should actually maybe say I've worked remotely for the last 4 years. First for a nonprofit organization, and then the last 2 years with our own business, Apochromatik. And actually my very first 2 jobs out of college, the first 12 months I was out of college, I was working remotely from an apartment in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So I have a lot of experience with working remotely, both early in my career and then the last 4 years.
Well, why don't you lay that out a little bit? Because you've had quite the impressive career, Amy. I would say, like, every time I introduce you to anyone, I tell you, like, if this girl has done everything, this woman has done everything there is to do and done it really well. So why don't you wow the people a little bit and get them to know a little bit more about you?
I graduated from Luther College in Northeast Iowa, and then spent 2 years working in Iowa politics, where you learn a lot of career lessons. And then I went to the University of Chicago Law School. And after graduating from law school there, I was an associate at Skadden in the litigation group here in Chicago. After just shy of 6 years at Skadden, I went to Ungrady and Harris, which is now part of Nixon Peabody, and was an associate and then partner in litigation, and specifically did a lot of IP litigation. And after becoming partner at Ungrady, I became the Dean of Students at the University of Chicago Law School, where I particularly focused on helping students develop their leadership and professionalism skills, which is part of what led to my career now, helping attorneys work on their leadership and career skills.
So she's been a partner at a law firm, and she's also been a dean of students at one of the most prestigious law schools in the country. I mean, super impressive. So you've talked a little bit about your work from home history. Why don't you talk about some of the strategies you think people should be employing now that they're on lockdown?
Sure. So first, I just want to stress that I think people are being really hard on themselves. I was texting with a friend who has a precocious 8-year-old and a big job this morning, and it's just a lot. So I think just acknowledging that everybody's doing something that we're not used to doing. But even if you work from home, you're probably, if you have children, you're probably used to them being in school or having childcare help. So it's a new situation for everyone. And I think the first thing is to give yourself some grace that you're probably doing the best you can. Everybody else is too. So don't expect that you're going to be able to operate at the level that you want to in your work or in parenting if you have children. I think another thing is to begin with the end in mind. So to think through, how do you want to look back on this a couple of years from now at this time? How do you want your kids to look back on this a couple of years from now? And depending on the age, I mean, you might want to sit down and talk about it. What's important to everybody? Because really, you want your kids to learn their multiplication tables, but this is also a stressful and scary time. So it's probably more important to you that they have fond memories of this time than that they master 8 times 8 more quickly. So thinking it through, and even if they're little, you can talk about, you know, when a bear goes through hibernation, how do they wake up different than when they went in, right? When a caterpillar turns into a butterfly, what are they doing in between? And this is sort of a cocoon time for your family. So talking about that and thinking about what's really important, it probably isn't that all chores are completed by 8 a.m. And so just being realistic.
Sounds like my household. I would try to get it done all by 8 a.m.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, I have a two-part question, like especially with executives that are working from home or people even in a sales environment. So like, what are like 1 or 2 things that are like the biggest common mistakes of being productive and efficient? And then I guess the second part of that is, what are some 1 or 2 strategies, or you could expand from there on what you can do to stay productive at home? Because the biggest common thing that I've heard is nobody can be productive in the home environment. Not only just because of kids that we're talking about, but some people have to put a lock on the refrigerator because it seems like every 2 minutes they're going to open up the refrigerator, see what's in there. Or I always joked about the mailbox guy that always has to keep going checking the mailbox every 5 minutes because they're waiting for something in the mail. So maybe you have some insight on that.
Yeah, I think it can be really helpful to come up with a schedule, and it's going to deviate. It's not going to work perfectly every day, but to come up with some sort of rough outline. And so if you are dealing with kids at home and a partner who's also juggling work obligations, maybe somebody is in charge of breakfast in the first couple hours of the day while the other person is heads down doing deep work. And then maybe a little later you switch and you're sitting next to the child while they're doing their homework, in theory. And so you're doing a little less deep work, but you still can be sending emails and things like that, right? So coming up with a schedule, maybe you have a toddler and nap time is everybody, even the older child, has quiet time in their room from 1 to 3 so that everybody can work. So figuring out a schedule that works for the season of life that you're in will be really helpful. And that also helps your clients, your supervisors, your colleagues know when they can expect you to be really focused and online. Because if it's, the problem I think becomes when supervisors can't reach you and aren't sure when you're going to get that work done. And everybody's workplace is different. I know places that are saying, okay, normally you're 40 hours a week, we're only expecting 30 hours a week during this crazy time. Others are saying, we don't care if you get all your work done after the kids go to sleep. But that also means that then you're not getting any sleep, right? So you have to think through But I think that having a target schedule each day can be really helpful in instilling some discipline and some constancy for the whole family.
Yep. So how about the opposite of that, real quick? Because you had mentioned that employers may expect 30 hours a week instead of 40, but I know I'm guilty of this, where you end up putting more time in because everything's right there and you're not going anywhere, and you're like, well, I'll just take care of this, and 3 hours go by and it's 11 o'clock at night. So what are some strategies to stop?
Yeah, so I ran into this when I was working for a national nonprofit. I was in their office in Washington, D.C. one day and walked out of my temporary office at 7:15, and everybody else was gone. And I realized, wait a minute, I'm always working until 7:15. And so I think when you're at home, you don't realize everyone else has stopped working.
Yep.
So you want to have, again, a set stop time, and maybe that's dinner time, and you try not to do anything after that. I know someone who works remotely permanently, and what he does is his office light is on a timer. So at 6 p.m. it goes off. So if he wants to work past 6 p.m., he has to consciously get up, turn the light back on as sort of a visible cue to him to stop working. And so I think that's really important. And if you have realistic expectations for yourself, then you're less likely to burn yourself out and overwork during this time.
Yeah.
So what are some tactics you think about? Because it seems like one of the things that we want to set too is this transparency with people about when you will be on and when you will be off, just from a time management standpoint. I mean, I could think of like an out of office, having that up and saying, hey, here are the times that I'm responding to emails, and kind of a setup. What are other tactics that people might be able to use in order to manage their time, set some boundaries from a time standpoint, and also be transparent with the people that they're working with or the people they report to about these things?
I think you want to think about who you owe an explanation to. So a lot of times, I had a boss once who said, why do you put an out of office on? And I said, well, so people know that I'm not going to respond immediately. And she said, why should they expect you to? You're just drawing attention to the fact you're not there. And realistically, you're probably responding the next day anyway, and it doesn't matter. So I think thinking about who does it really matter? Who needs to know that? But yeah, you can have it in an out of office. It can be in your email signature. If you have just a few key clients, it might make sense to just reach out to them proactively and say, hey, how are you managing during this time? What's working for you? When are you working? And then it opens up a conversation. Another thing is to have a meeting with your team and talk about what works best for people. Because again, if you have a 4-year-old at home, your life is going to look pretty different than somebody who has a 15-year-old who can be handed a screen and can go, sit quietly and entertain themselves. So I think having an open conversation about it gets everybody on the same page.
I think the next step I had questions about too is not only the time boundaries, but obviously physical boundaries. Like, how do you not entwine work with home and vice versa? Like, how do you not take home into the workspace? So do you have any strategies people could employ to kind of keep that barrier physically as opposed to just being a time thing?
So there are lots of different things you can do. One thing I think that actually is really helpful that's pretty basic is have a Rubbermaid container or an Amazon box, whatever it is. If you're working in an area that is not really an office, say you're working in a dining room, put all of your work stuff in the Rubbermaid container or the Amazon box at the end of the day and put it out of sight. So you have some sort of clear end. I mean, not everybody has a dedicated space, right? And so at least giving yourself some sort of separation is helpful. You might be able to see actually the screen behind me. This was from Amazon, I think is maybe $80 or something. Think about, could you put up a screen to close off the workspace? And just things like that so that you're not looking at the work and it's not taking over your home, because everybody has enough on their plates right now without falling over their work laptop first thing in the morning.
So you're saying that's actually a screen behind you, a stand-up screen that's just like a foldable kind of thing? No.
And productivity is the biggest thing, because I know outside of quarantining, I know a lot of people in my industry, they need that office space because they can't figure out how to be productive. I got lucky enough early on that I figured out a way to be a little more productive that it's it's the opposite. So if I go in the office, I feel like I never can get anything done. But because you figure out closure, you figure out what is needed, your tools that need to be there, how you can be productive, reminders and whatnot. And so it's a good learning curve for everybody right now, in case there's more flexibility going forward in the workplace, where there's a lot more working from home, and we're most status, especially with our busy lives, that it's a good morale booster for employees as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I would also say that one thing I've noticed is people are spending a lot of time during the workday on non-work things. And I mean, that always happens.
Yeah.
But especially right now. And I actually talked to a group the other morning where people were talking about how reassuring they found it to watch the president's evening briefing. And then 2 hours later, I was on a conference call where everyone was saying it's key to their sanity to not watch the president's daily briefing. So whatever it is, figure out the amount of news that you want to be taking in right now. I often think about it as the 3 circles, and you probably have heard this. You have the circle, the inner circle, the things that you can control. And then the next circle is the things that you can influence. And the outer circle is the center, or the things that concern you. So the things that under your control, I mean, you can control whether you get out of bed at 7 o'clock, say, or you can control whether you work out every evening. You can control whether you spend all day refreshing, whatever news site you like. But if you spend all your time worried about those things that you don't have any influence on and don't have any control over, you're not going to get any work done, and it's not going to be helpful or healthy for you or for your family.
Good points.
So one of the things that, as you're talking about those things you can control, the things you worry about, there may be a lot of people who are for the first time dealing or managing or controlling people, or not controlling, but like in reporting, having people report to them as they're working from home, or vice versa, as we talked about a little bit earlier, may have children in the area who are now being, kind of under their, every minute they're, reporting or asking, what do we do now? What strategies do you have for people managing others during this kind of remote or isolating time?
I think having a clear schedule can be really helpful, again, because then everybody understands when they're expected to be available. And the same goes for kids. If you have kids who are going to ask you 18 times what time is lunch, do a written schedule, and then they know when lunch is, right? Or instead of, they're asking what's for lunch, write down these are your lunch options, so that they're not doing that, because that uncertainty, it really is causing, I think, a lot of extra stress for everybody, and you can alleviate some of that. I think being willing to be flexible is really important, but still having that clarity can be really useful. I think also recognizing that people are feeling isolated right now, and so they may need more time and attention than you normally give. I mean, you may have an employee who is usually very happy to work independently, who now is coming to your one-on-one with a lot more issues, or calling you more often just to chat. And so understand that people need different things. And the same with kids. Kids who are normally really independent might be needing more help from you, because they're not getting it from their teachers, they're not getting it from their friends. So just understanding that people may be needing more from you right now. And also, at the same time you're trying to meet everyone else's needs, remembering to meet your own needs. So if you need to work out every day, or you're not able to, fit for public consumption, make sure that you're doing that, so that you're taking care of yourself and not just giving to the employees you're managing, the family members that you're around a lot more right now, and all of that.
Yeah. One thing that came to mind when you were talking about a clear schedule, I think what you meant is concise and scheduled, so that people are on the same page, because the first thing I thought when clear was like an open category. One thing, no. Yeah, but no, it's a good thing to point out, though, is white space can really be a time killer. And so fill in that gap, because otherwise you sit at the table too long, or you sit at the computer too long. Whereas if you fill that schedule and have those concise things, and even if you don't complete the project right away, like if you have that scheduled lunch and the kids are going to be bugging you, you just have to stop, because otherwise other things will overlap. And then by the end of the day, you feel like you only accomplished 1 or 2 out of the 10 things that were on your list. But I just maybe some of the viewers might have thought the same thing, but I wanted to point out some of the things that I do is, if I have that concise time, that I fill those spots. Otherwise, I feel like if it's like Parkinson's law, it fills the gap of whatever time allowed, even though it might be a very minimum task that might be needed. Yeah,
and I think, one thing that you can do, I absolutely 100% agree with you, but I meant established schedule that everyone can
Sure.
see, but then be flexible within that. But one thing that you can do too is think about who else you can be enlisting for help. So for example, if you have young kids who are obviously craving attention, this might be the time to finally coach your parents through how to use FaceTime. If you have staff that are needing more attention and you just feel like, oh my gosh, put everybody together on a Zoom call. We have actually started offering these cocktails during COVID at 5 o'clock Central Time, Mondays and Thursdays, to get people together because people are feeling isolated. And it's just an opportunity to network with some other nice professionals from around, well, actually around the world, and just hop on a Zoom call and chat with people about how they're managing. And so looking for things like that where it's not just you giving the support, but you're getting support, and engaging other folks can be really helpful too as you're trying to manage everything.
Absolutely.
So one of the things, Amy, you talked about, and I wanted to get some clarity on it. So you talk about the fact that when you're managing other people, they may need more time. The kids may need more time. You may need more time. There's a lot of more there, but there's only 24 hours in that day.
Right.
Again, I know I keep going back to it, but it's such a hard thing to do, to set these boundaries and not have them bleed over. Any other strategies you could think of that would allow people to kind of really segment off, other than the schedule? Obviously, the schedule we talked about and the transparency. Anything else we can offer, things that are successful tactics to allow these to allow for more, while at the same time not giving too much, right?
I think triaging is so important, and thinking about what's really important in this situation. So it's probably more important to you that you hit your numbers and don't lose any great employees than it is that everybody's weekly reports or whatever are done, right? So think about what doesn't need to be done right now. This is a great chance to look through your to-do list. And we actually have a post on our blog about this. Start with what on here can be eliminated. And maybe it's not being eliminated permanently, but it can be eliminated for now because we're in pretty extraordinary times. What on the to-do list can be automated? What can be delegated? What can be traded? So for example, there are a lot of, I think, household tasks that you probably could be teaching your kids to do and getting them engaged depending on their age, right? There are probably, if you have a real go-getter on your team who is looking for new challenges, this might be the time to start delegating a particular task to them and have them taking it over. So even if it's not delegating, you can trade tasks with your spouse, or maybe trade tasks with another parent down the block who's willing to take something over for you. And then also, just giving yourself, I often use a timer for tasks that I know have to be done and can't be automated or delegated or traded, and just say, I'm going to do the best I can on this for 15 minutes and see where I get. Because I think there are a lot of inefficiencies, as Butch referenced. So often the work expands to fill the time. And I think a lot of people are saying, oh, I have all this time now because I'm not commuting and I'm not doing social activities and things like that. And that's definitely true. But that just means that the tasks you're already getting done might just be expanding and filling. And particularly for people who are not used to working remotely, or maybe a colleague is sick and you're trying to manage their workload, or your kids are home, whatever it is. We have a lot more on our plates right now, even at the same time that we're not doing the commuting and things like that.
I think it's an important thing you brought up too, is that you can think of it from the contra. So if someone is thinking that they're really maybe feeling stunted at work, they're not feeling like they're really exposed, this is maybe the time too for them to say, hey, look, what things can I do to help my manager or help other staff team members and really step up to the plate? Maybe they don't have the kids at home, or maybe they don't have as much of the other stressors, and as opposed to filling that downtime with latency, or filling it up with just video games or whatever because you're home all day, picking up those extra things and showing off, as you talked about, executive presence at the beginning, or showing off the other parts that may actually allow them to excel during this period and use this time as a launching pad.
Yes, I mean, this is really a time when you can establish your reputation as a go-giver on your team, and someone who's willing to step in and help others. We actually have a post. There's a page on our website of COVID-19 resources, including a post we did, I think, a week ago about 3 things you can be doing right now in your career. So for folks who have the time and space, this is a great time to update your resume, to update your LinkedIn, to look for new things that you can take on at work for new challenges, and really work on making yourself indispensable. And particularly if you're not in a season of life where you're caring for an elderly parent or for small children, this is really a time when you can help your colleagues as well as do things for yourself.
Very cool. So we talked about a little bit about obviously tactics for working from home, tactics for managing some other people. One of the big things I think we talked about in the pre-interview with you is about also the mentality of like this being a time of a lot of frustration for people and maybe a lot of headaches and stuff. And you talked a lot about how the importance of positivity. So can you share a little bit about how staying positive may kind of allow people to transform this experience for everyone?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think you want to go back to how do you want to look back on this time in a few years? I have a memory from high school, and let's just say I don't have a ton of positive memories from high school, but one of my fondest memories from high school was the time that our track bus broke down on the side of the road. And that's because it turned into this really fun experience. And so I think even though there are a lot of negative things, there are a lot of really sick people, there are people fighting for their lives, there are people who are mourning loved ones who can't do so with the comfort of a public funeral, right? There are a lot of bad things going on. So I don't want to minimize that at all. But I also think that you want to focus on the things that you can control and the things you can influence, and not spend all your time spinning on the things that you're concerned about. So part of that may be saying, I'm only going to watch the news for this amount of time. I'm only going to be on social media for this amount of time. I think also reaching out to other people. Again, so I gave the example of the cocktails during COVID, that people can attend that, right? You can hop on Zoom with your grandma. Do things like that to stay connected. And I think that really provides a lot of perspective. Another way to do that is to think about how you can help others. So for example, our godchildren's mom asked me for some help in coming up with some activities. And I made them a list of missions, which I don't think this is what she had in mind, but I came up with a spreadsheet for them of activities. And the first one that our goddaughter, who's 12, picked was drawing a picture and sending it to someone who lives alone and who can't go out because she's over 60. And so I think that act of, even your kids can draw pictures for their grandparents or for the older lady down the street who can't have visitors right now. So you and they can get involved in serving others, and that really helps with perspective. And I think also reminding yourself of other challenges that you've conquered can be helpful. I read a lot of autobiographies and memoirs, and they don't have an interesting book if they didn't overcome something. And so maybe this is just going to be an interesting chapter in the book of your life, right? And so looking at it through that lens and trying to keep it all in perspective can be helpful. One activity I think can be really useful is, and you can do this with your team, you could do this with family members, is just going over what everyone is grateful for. Because at the end of the day, there are a lot of bad things, but there are also a lot of good things. I had our godchildren do this, and the little girl came up with that she's happy because she gets to have dinner every night with her whole family. And so there are some good things in the midst of this crazy, stressful time. And so focusing on those, I think, can help. I mean, one question I keep asking clients is, what does this time make possible for you? And maybe this time makes possible for you learning how to get rid of some of the stuff on your to-do list that doesn't really matter, but you've been spending time on because now you don't have the time for it. But maybe it makes possible deeper connections with colleagues because you're doing more catching up on video and asking deeper questions about how people are doing. So it makes something possible for you, and asking yourself what that is and thinking about that can be helpful to keep a positive attitude.
That's really some good perspective, I think. And lastly, you talked about video, people connecting with video. And I know one of the things we wanted to talk on is this medium may be wholly new to people. They may be used to being in a room, sitting over coffee, over a desk, or in the break room. What are some strategies people can use as they work towards video, or as they get more used to video or Zoom calls or whatever, FaceTime, that can allow them to have better interactions with people or more meaningful ones
Sure.
in this difficult time?
Yeah, and I should say, I mean, reaching out to community is really important during this time, whether that's coworkers or family or friends. And so we've seen a lot more people doing this. We actually, in our attorney mastermind, I mean, that's a pretty specific kind of community where everyone knows each other well and is all working on career goals individually and supporting each other. But we use video with them every Friday, long before this started, because it deepens the connection when you're seeing people. And it makes the communication easier, and just even seeing in people's houses changes your connection, right? So I think there's a lot of good reasons to use video, not just during this time. But some of the things that you can change that make a difference are just so obvious. You think, why did I not think of that before? I did a Zoom call the other day and you can use Zoom, you can use Google Hangouts, Skype, FaceTime, whatever you prefer. But I had a call with someone the other day and her camera was dirty. And so it gave her this weird kind of glow, halo. And then I realized it was just a smudge. So just wipe off your video camera so that people can actually see you to connect better. I think that what you have behind you can be an interesting way to build connection. I have a friend who posted on Facebook that the other day she did a whole call and did not realize that one of her kids had put a giant dinosaur right behind her, but it was in their view, but she was concentrating on other people's pictures and didn't even notice that. But you want to make sure that you pick up whatever's behind you, so at least it's neat and organized. I think you also want to, particularly if you're handling a lot of confidential information, watch if you have a whiteboard behind you. I did a call, I think yesterday or 2 days ago with a vendor, and he had all of their expansion plans for the next 6 months on the whiteboard behind him. And I mean, like, I read all of them. They were clearly visible. So watch confidential information. And want to watch the camera angle. I was on a webinar the other day taught by someone who had his camera going basically straight up his nose. So it was like the bottom of his face and the ceiling. And that's not a great way to build a relationship with someone, right? So think about, what people are seeing and how you're seeing it. You don't want to be on top of the camera because then it looks like you're overpowering people. You don't want to be 20 feet back either. And again, all you have to do is lift your laptop up, put it on my laptop is sitting on a stand. I know your guest yesterday was talking about different ways to rearrange your furniture to get at a better angle, both so you look better on video and just so it's more comfortable working. So check out that video from yesterday and think about how you want to set up your computer and just kind of what message you're setting forth. Because if you're focused on just getting information across, you don't care. But if you're focused on building relationships, then all these little things can make a big difference.
Awesome.
Very cool. Amy, any last comments? We hit about the half-hour mark, so I want to keep keep these bite-sized for people to kind of digest and not overwhelm them. Any last thoughts or questions or things you want to highlight for people as we kind of send them off onto the rest of their Wednesday? Today's Wednesday, right? That's so crazy.
Yeah. Can you put up, Adam? Could you put up the slide?
Absolutely.
So I mentioned this thing, Cocktails During COVID. We've been doing, and this is totally free. This is not a sales thing. This is people just getting together with a cocktail or, just with an iced tea or whatever, at 5 o'clock Mondays and Thursdays, 5 o'clock Central Time. Just sign up there at aposignup.com/cocktails during COVID. And then that way you get the link, the Zoom link to do it. And I encourage you to join us for that if that might be helpful to you. The other thing is, if you join our email list at apochromatik.com, we actually are giving all of our email subscribers, a free 30-minute strategy call to talk about what this time might mean for their careers, because a lot of people are understandably anxious, and also how they're managing it in their lives. So sign up at apochromatik.com, and we're happy to do one of those 30-minute calls with you. And check out those COVID-19 resources we have on the website about things you can be doing in your career right now to be helpful. More information on managing remote workers, working remotely, things like that, just to help people through this time. And reach out if I can be helpful. I'm always happy to chat at amy@apochromatik.com.
Very cool. And one of the things I actually read when I was getting ready for today was that article you had written. So they do have some really great articles about working from home, the strategies that you can employ there. And check out those COVID-19 kind of resources. I think they will be, or they can be, a great refresher. And we'll try and post those links in the YouTube video we put up, as well as on our Facebook page when we put the video out. Yesterday we had some troubles with the live staying around. It kind of popped up sporadically, so we may actually I've recorded this, so we're going to put it back onto our pages for everyone to share and enjoy later on, because I think this has been really, really helpful. And I thank you so much, Amy.
I'm glad to do it. And I'm always happy to chat with people. If your networking group or your nonprofit group is feeling like, oh my gosh, we can't meet in person, so we can't provide value to our members, we have an executive presence webinar that we're happy to deliver for free to your members using our system. And we're happy to provide resources because we know this is a hard time for everyone, and we want to help however we can.
Yeah, and just so you guys know, Amy is actually local, so she's still in here in Chicago. It's, local small business people, like, you can actually sit down, have a coffee with Amy. She's great. She's fantastic. Obviously not now, but hopefully in the not too distant future.
We hope, right?
Yeah, right. We're all hoping for that. Butch, any last things you want to say?
No, I think it was a great video conference. I appreciate all the input and strategies that are going to be put in place, and hopefully some business owners as well as executives or employees could be a little bit more productive during this time frame, so we could all come out stronger than before.
Great. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. And I hope
Yeah.
everyone has a great afternoon.
Yeah, thanks so much to everybody. We're gonna sign it off for now. Everyone, please stay safe, stay healthy, take care of your families, and take care of your businesses as well. We'll be back tomorrow with Scott. Right? We have Scott coming on.
Yes. Yep, Scott tomorrow.
Scott,
and Chris Friday.
Chris Friday. So Scott's going to speak about some of the more logistical issues that people are having, maybe with some remote workers, and how you can actually implore call centers and different things to actually maximize your business during this difficult time. And then also on Friday will be tech solutions from Chris, who can provide you with different options and ways to stay connected or stay efficient from the technology world. So thanks again, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.
See everybody later. Bye.
Bye.